Yeah, g'day YouTubers. Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to talk about the Stihl USG chart and go over the 9 different columns. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 columns. So we'll go over the 9 columns and we'll go over each column and what they represent. Apart from the 9 columns, in each box you'll see that there's a line up the top and there's a line down the bottom. But with the line down the bottom, there is no information of what that actually means. But what it actually means is the information for the raker, which is depicted by number 3. And we'll get into that in a minute. So first of all, Stihl USG. What does USG stand for? Universal Sharpening Grinder. So in column A, or the first column, you'll see an icon, 3 rivets, and then it says T equals A divided by 2. So 3 rivets divided by 2 gives you your pitch. So your first column's your pitch. Second column, you'll see 3 teeth. Left tooth, which is number 1, right tooth number 2, and number 3 is the raker or depth gauge, which is measured by a raker tool. Next column, you've got the A scale. So this is the A scale on the back of the grinder. The head tilts, and technical term for that when we're using a grinder for that purpose is top plate cutting angle. But because it's a USG grinder, it's also used for hedge trimmer blades and circular saws. The next scale is your B scale. That's your sliding vise that moves backwards and forwards. Again, it's used for hedge trimmers and circular saws with the appropriate attachment. The next scale is the C scale, and that's this one here. And in this situation, for chainsaw chains, it's the top plate angle, not to be confused with the top plate cutting angle. So, just to refresh on that, top plate angle is this angle that's on the top of the tooth when we view down, and top plate cutting angle is we've got a beveled angle on the tooth. It's generally regarded as the grinding wheel that comes in or the file that creates that angle. The next scale, if we move over, you'll see a picture of a grinding wheel, and that's the grinding wheel reference number if you want to order it. And underneath is the raker wheel. So this bottom line that you see on the bottom is all to do with the raker. So don't get confused. And if you go to the next column, you'll see that it needs a radius of 1.7 millimeters and it has an angle of 30 degrees. If you look at the icon, you'll see it's on an angle. That's your 30-degree angle. And the radius is 1.7 millimeters. That's the radius that's on the wheel. The next column, the 8th column, shows you the raker gauge tool number, the part number, and there's the depth for it, and that's in metric, which is 0.45 of a millimeter or 18 thou. The next column says 75 degrees. That's an international symbol there because we're using 90 degrees as a reference point, and we're measuring from 90 degrees up to here, and it's saying that the side plate should be around 75 degrees. Stihl use different angles than Oregon, but it is still the same angle for the top plate, the A scale. Now what I mean by that, it's pretty straightforward. So this A scale here on an Oregon grinder, if this is vertical, Oregon are using 90 degrees for vertical. So if you were to tilt over to 60 degrees, it means that you'll move 30 degrees to the right. That's what an Oregon grinder does. A Stihl grinder uses 0 degrees for vertical reference point. So if we're going to do the same angle, we'll move 30 degrees to the left into the 30-degree mark. So it'll go 10 or 0, 10, 20, 30. On an Oregon, 90, 80, 70, 60. Exactly the same thing, different reference point. One tilts to the right, one tilts to the left. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so that's that. So that's our radius there. We've mentioned about that. The next is the raker gauge height. So we've mentioned that. And we've mentioned about the top plate cutting angle. And the reference point is horizontal. Now, what we need to do is go back and talk about the raker. So you can see in this column it's got 1, 2, and 3. Left tooth, right tooth, raker. So in scale A, if we're going to do this chain here, which is a 1/4 inch picot, what they're telling you is that leave it at 40 degrees, leave the vise at 0, leave the C scale at 0, use this raker wheel over here, it's got this number here, dress the wheel at 30 degrees, and that's the raker number, and again that's the top plate cutting angle. Pretty straightforward when somebody tells you about it. Now, if you actually look at the A scale, you'll notice, you'll just see plus 40, plus 40. You'll see it all the way down until we get down to here, and it starts to get into the tungsten carbide chains. And the last one is RH for rapid hexa, and we'll just go over that one there. As you can see, 932, 3/8 chain, rapid hexa. There's your symbols, 1, 2, and 3. So here we are, the left tooth 25 degrees, the right tooth 25 degrees. That's a top plate cutting angle. On an Oregon, that's 65 degrees, so that's the equivalent. Remember I said before? So if this is 0 degrees, we're going to go 10, 20, 25. On an Oregon, we're going to go 80, 70, 65. Same thing. Then on the vise, on the hexa, we don't touch that. On the top plate angle, that's the angle of the tooth viewed from the top. That's on the C scale. That's 25 degrees. That's the same on both grinders. Grinding wheel for hexa is different. There's the number there. There's the raker wheel. And there is our dressed wheel of 30 degrees on the that's the information to dress it. They're all dressed at 30 degrees, by the way. And next to it is the raker gauge, 0.65 of a millimetre or 25 thou. Excuse me. And also there's our top plate cutting angle. Now that's pretty straightforward once you understand it. All the information is there right in front of you. It's just interpreting that information. I've explained it all, and what you will see if you look down briefly, if you look down here, you'll see the different chains. So it starts off by the smallest and it gets bigger. If we zoom in, you can see that we've got 3/8 chain here. Now, that could be 3/8 full chisel or semi-chisel. Now, the other thing that I'll mention this briefly, because this is liable to confuse people a lot. In column B, where you'll see this is a sliding vise, all the way down until you get down to some of the rapid duros and the hexa, you'll see minus 15, positive 15. All the same. So what's this? Is this 10 degrees tilt or is this 15 degrees tilt? What is it? No. What Stihl are doing is this. This is the difference. This is called offset grinding. When you do 10 degrees downward tilt, imagine this is your center line of your grinding wheel. This is a left-hand tooth and this is a right-hand tooth. All right? So this is a grinding wheel, left-hand tooth, right-hand tooth. When you do 10 degrees tilt, you move them away from the grinding wheel. What they're doing here with the minus and the positive, they're moving the teeth over like that. They're crossing. Now, maybe I'm confusing you. I'll try and say it another way. If you've got a left-hand tooth, you're going to move that left-hand tooth over the center line of the grinding wheel. And what that will do, that will cancel out any error if the wheel is not in the center, because you're moving 15, minus 15 or positive 15 over the center of the wheel, which will cancel out any error. That's what it's for. It's to cancel out any error, because as the grinding wheel shrinks in size with usage, if you don't adjust the negative 15 and the positive 15, the grinding wheel will grind slightly different on the left and slightly different on the right. There'll be a slight differential on the offset grinding. So by doing minus 15 and positive 15, it cancels out any little area that you may have. Now, the other thing is, still don't recommend any 10 degrees downward tilt. Another thing that you can do on your USG grinder is put a metal ruler right in the middle, and you can move. Let's just say that you are out 1 millimeter. Now, if you're out 1 millimeter and you center whatever you find out, whether you're 1 millimeter out or 1.5 millimeters out, depends on how small your wheel is. If you were 1 millimeter, negative 1 millimeter out, that was what you found your error was, and you done 10 degrees downward tilt, then you would go, let's just say you want to do 10 millimeters downward tilt. Then you would move to 11 on one side and 9 on the other to cancel out the error. But just remember, if you want to do 10 degrees downward tilt, in this case that'll be more like probably 12 millimeters on the scale, you'll move the teeth away from the wheel. That's all you've got to remember. When you cross the wheel, so in other words, if you're looking at a left-hand tooth, that vise moves across, the tooth moves across the wheel to the other side, that is offset grinding. And that's exactly what Stihl do here, because they don't use a wheel alignment, because by doing positive and minus 15, it's offset grinding, it's not tilt. And that's what I thought. And a lot of people look at this column and see all the positive, it's all plus 40. They go, what's the 3 plus 40s? And why have you got positive and minus 15? Oh, has it got 10 degrees downward tilt? A lot of people think that this refers to 15 degrees tilt. Got nothing to do with it. It's offset grinding to cancel out the error because of the alignment of the grinding wheel. Just remember that when you move the teeth, if this is a left-hand tooth and this is a right-hand tooth, on an Oregon grinder and even on the Stihl grinder, if you move the teeth away from the center of the line, you'll create that offset angle, that 10 degree tilt. So hopefully that explains that. It is different on a USG. They don't mention 10 degrees downward tilt because they don't use it. This is for Stihl RS chain, RM chain. Yeah, it is different. RHM chain, RCX, RMX, PMX, PMN. It's for Stihl only. They're not worried about 10 degrees downward tilt because they don't use it, but you can do it. Just remember, move the vise away from the grinding wheel. Now, when you get a Stihl USG grinder, as I said before, USG is for Universal Sharpening Grinder. You'll also get this chart. This chart is for hedge trimmers up the top, and down the bottom is a circular saw. So if we talk about the hedge trimmers and we try and zoom in there a little bit for a little bit of clarity, you'll find out that here is the numbers of the different hedge trimmers down in the left side column. Here we look at the A scale, minus 10, minus 10, minus 6, minus 8. So you've got all the different minuses there to set it to, and we use the B scale at 0, and on the C scale plus 45, minus 45, and then it changes a little bit, plus 48, minus 48, plus 50, minus 50, and even down the bottom there you'll get down to even some 54s and 58s. So provided you've got the attachment, you've got to buy the attachment to do that, and they're fairly straightforward and they're not really confusing. The next thing is the Stihl USG for the circular saws. You've got the A scale, as you can see, it's got +5 for hard and +15 for soft. There's no, obviously you would leave the scale, B scale, on 0. And the C scale, you've got some settings there too, plus or minus 15. And you've got the wheel, that's the wheel they recommend. And the dressing of the wheel, 2.4 millimeter radius. And there's just a little bit of an icon where the wheel sits in the tooth. All of that seems to be fairly straightforward. It's not as confusing on this chart as the chart for the USG grinder for the chainsaw chain. That is definitely more confusing. So this is pretty straightforward. But as with the circular saw and the hedge trimmers, you have to have the proper attachment that attaches to it. So it's pretty straightforward, and I would imagine that this chart would probably also come if you were to buy the hedge trimmer, or you may even get additional information with it. But this information should allow you to grind them without a problem whatsoever. Only one other thing to let you know is, because these angles are so small, you've even got -6 degrees here, such a small angle, is that I've noticed that the USG grinder has an error of 3 degrees on that A scale, and it's never been rectified in 15 years. So it's 3 degrees out, and I know quite a few people that have the grinder. So yeah, you may want to sort of take that into consideration and check that. It's pretty easy to check. If you use a square, set your grinder to 0 and just get a small square, and if you find yours is off a little bit, pretty simple just to put in another mark on it. Just use a square like that, sit it on the guide rails, make sure that your wheel should sit nice and straight. If it's out a little bit, set it straight using this, and you may want to just put a texture colour on the back plate or inscribe a little mark with a scribe like that there, your new mark. So I don't know about the new USG grinders. Mine's only about 2 years old, and I know they've had that error for quite a while. It's not really a huge issue if you're doing chainsaw chain, but if you're doing something like this, it's only got 6 degrees on it. You can see 8 degrees there, and there's 6 degrees here. To be out 3 degrees is half that amount, so that's really bad. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.